This special episode is a pilot for a new series set in the Debbie and Carrie universe, and in an alternate timeline from the normal one we saw earlier, in which Debbie and Carrie moved back to the town at the start of the show's 8th season after Michael Jefferson and Charles McKenzie were murdered by a homophobe. Because that was prevented, Debbie and Carrie instead remained in Dallas.
No sign of that bully. Just keep walking and we will be home in about an hour.
I don't see why you insist on us walking from school instead of taking the school buses again. If we do this every day, we will wear out our shoes.
I don't mind replacing our shoes, but I won't let you get attacked again.
Look, there's Richard and Annika.
And why are they out walking on the streets? Let's pick them up.
So that's what happened, Mother Carrie. That racist punk not only called me and Annika the N-word, he physically pushed me out of a seat and took it from me. The bus driver did nothing to stop it, so Annika and I jumped off and started walking.
This boy was wearing a t-shirt that said, "White Lives Matter More." I couldn't believe the school would allow him to wear that.
What the hell? This is the year 2037 and we are still having to deal with racists.
There may always be bigoted and stupid people in our society. So now we have to deal with this kid.
It seems like only yesterday that Carrie and I were in school battling our own bigoted enemies. Now it is Richard and Annika's turn to deal with them.
Mother Debbie, you two were targets of bigots? But you are white.
It doesn't matter what my skin color is. I and Carrie were targeted because we were both lesbian and atheist. People thought our lifestyle and beliefs made us deserving targets. It's always the same excuse, you are not like us, so we look down on you. I remember having a talk with my mother's back when I was a teen. Mother Lucy, do you have any idea how the assumption that blacks are inferior to whites began? It certainly didn't exist among Europeans 1,000 years ago. But I think that was mainly because Europeans had little contact with people south of the Sahara Desert. What we do know is that in the time period, most of Europe was dominated by a political system known as feudalism, in which kings and emperors had absolute power over their subjects. Below the rulers were the nobility, who had most of the wealth, and the clergy that cooperated with the rulers and nobles to keep the lower classes in line. Then below the nobles and clergy were the peasants, who were free but also poor. The maintenance of a strict social hierarchy meant that peasants would have no chance to become rich and join the nobility. And even worse than the peasants were the serfs, who were actual slaves, bound to the land and forced to work on farms without pay. But those serfs were of the same nation and skin color as the rest of their society, so it was easy for a serf to escape and seek freedom elsewhere. Being white meant they could blend in and likely avoid capture. As Europeans began to colonize the American continents in the 1600s, they came up with a solution to the problem of slavery among themselves. They began capturing Africans and taking them across the Atlantic to work on plantations, just as the serfs did in Europe. But being black rather than white meant these slaves would have a much more difficult time escaping to freedom than the white serfs in Europe did. When you start treating people that look differently from you as inferior, it becomes a habit. You see a slave and think they will be a slave forever because that is their natural destiny. But the fact remains that blacks became socially inferior in the Americas because whites made them so. Were the white serfs in Europe inferior to those above them? Again, only socially. And the whites that made blacks inferior have therefore a moral duty to make them equals. To this day, there are people, in America and around the world, who use corrupt politics and religion to advocate for social conservatism, which is all about returning societies to something like the feudalism of Europe centuries ago. And we must never allow them to drag us back to that way of life, for it degrades us all.
As a white person, I do not feel superior to Lucy at all. Had I lived in Europe 1,000 years ago, I might have been a peasant or even a serf. Also, I am a woman and men might feel superior to me. I am a lesbian and straight women might feel superior to me. I am an atheist and Christians might feel superior to me. You can come up with 1,000 reasons to justify being bigoted and thus conservative, but we only need one reason to be progressive: the common humanity we all share.
As both African Americans and gays, Charles and I have had to fight for our rights. And as your fathers, Richard, and the uncles of Annika, we will fight just as hard for you kids as well as for your mothers. We will do our best to stop all forms of bigotry no matter who it hurts or how it hurts them.